Before we dive into this week's topic where I tell you to keep running Gollux on the daily and collect spares for the imminent future, let me start out by saying this. The only thing that I'm an authority on are my own feelings and opinions. I'm not dictating how you should play this game. Agreeing or disagreeing with me should be a surface level consideration or just an amusement. And the focus should be using the information that I provide in this video as a way to explore your own opinion on the topic of potential late game gear upgrades in Reboot. So yeah, in this video we'll dive into how good Gollux gear actually is and is going to be in the future. With that small intro out of the way, let's start to take a look at your typical late game gear that you would have. I already skipped out on the CRA pieces here. The upgrade path is quite obvious as the Eternal pieces are very strong even at a, somewhat low Star Force count, and this setup right here is something that is very much achievable. We have one pitched item here down at the bottom. I know pitched is pitched, but this one is farmable by your entire account, so you will have access to black hearts in most cases, right? Of course you can get unlucky, etc. That's the nature of this game. With that being said, there are a couple of slots that aren't filled right now, but these are obvious switches. Very much obvious switches. So as soon as you get the badge from Black Mage, you'll equip it, right? As soon as you get the emblem, you'll work on getting free line attack, but that's done relatively quickly, right? And you'll just equip it. As soon as you get the book, your cup gets thrown out the inventory and you'll equip the book. And then with the Eternal Terror, it is, the most interesting out of these first four pieces here, because you can equip this over your Kana's Treasure or Meistering at 21 stars relatively easily, and it doesn't necessarily need to be 22 stars, especially when we're looking into the future, right? And if you have lived under a rock, let me just catch you up to speed. In KMS, they made it easier to hit the 23rd, 24th, and 25th star, and actually got us, stars, or expanded the Star Force system all the way to 30 stars, effectively squeezing their wells for money, right? But it is very likely that we will also get this system, right? Which means that in the future we will upgrade most of our endgame pieces by rouletting between two of them, which means that actually keeping a 21 star Eternal Terror is kind of fine right now, kind of. With that being said, the following items are a little bit more interesting, starting off with the eye patch that you would equip. There's nothing here right now because there are a couple of options. If you have the Black Bean Mark, the eye patch is an easy upgrade, right? Even at 21 stars. If you have a transposed monocle or just a monocle, the eye patch is a little bit harder to slot in here, but at 22 stars it will be, a reasonable gain if you compare it to a 22 star monocle, right? Which in the future 23 star is gonna be more achievable, 24 star more achievable, and 25 stars is gonna be roughly as achievable as hitting a 23 star item right now. So with that being said, this is the most reasonable gear upgrade path that anybody would take. With that being said, I think the next easy item to talk about is actually right down here. It is the heart that is dropped by Extreme Lotus, which can replace the black heart, at roughly 18 stars, I think. 19 stars, maybe. Maybe it's a little higher, but it will replace the black heart. And honestly, if you feel like you don't want to run your hard Lotus Mules anymore, or you haven't even created any, keeping this at 17 stars and just slotting it in, dude, that's not a decision that I will be hating you for. So, next up in the realm of gear progression will be this item right here, the Berserked. So, the Berserked and the Twilight Mark are similar in strength, that you would want to have a 22-star Berserk before you equip it over your 22-star Twilight Mark in most scenarios, generally. I haven't calced this, but this is the general wisdom of the player base, I would say. And with that, we're just gonna accept it for the moment, but I will return to these two items right here in a later stage of this video. Now, then we have the Eternal pieces. No pitch set, I know, but I just wanted to include this because this is similar to the discussion about the Berserk and the Twilight Mark. You will eventually want to equip these over your arcanes, right? Which, oh, I think I kind of set this up wrong. I thought I could just slot these over, okay, for the... Ah, no, for none of these pieces. Oh, no. Okay, let me just delete the arcanes entirely. Bam. Eventually, you would want to switch entirely into Eternals, right? And this is where I would like to start this discussion, because there is a case that I've seen on Reddit or on Discord where if you already have a triple prime, triple crit damage glove, you would want to upgrade that further and keep using 2-set arcane. But you wouldn't want to leave your arcanes at 22 stars. You would want to push them further. The exact calcs, or if this is only a rumor or not, are not known to me. That is a fact that I just picked up somewhere and wanted to use in this video, that you've also heard about the possibility of this happening, right? But this leads greatly into the topic that I actually want to discuss, and that is how many stars do your weaker, more accessible items have to have in order to surpass the pitched boss set or the Eternal set, right? With the Eternal top head and bottom, right, it is easy, right? Because the stats on those are so much better than on the CRA pieces. But on other gear pieces, they get closer and closer and closer. Next item. We will talk about the source of suffering. So, up until now, I would say the gear upgrades that we talked about aren't as contentious, and this isn't gonna be an upgrade here that anybody would easily dispute, right? You would probably want to equip your source of suffering when you get it over a Dawn Pendant and keep on rocking your Gollux set, right? Because the Gollux set at 4 set gives you 30% ID and 30% boss damage, right? It is crazy how good these items are, right? But with that being said, I'm gonna be repeating general wisdom right now. Up until now, it was definitely the meta. Once you have your Dreamy Belt at 22 stars and your CFE at 22 stars, to equip these items and break the Gollux set. How that would look like is the following right here. You would unequip these and equip your pitched boss items. And in this setup, you would rock the Dawn Pendant, because together with the Slime Ring, it gives you the 2-set effect, which is 10% boss, some attack, and all stat, and you would complete your 10-set pitched boss set, right? And I've calculated this with my current stats, and yes, this would be better than having the Gollux pieces equipped, but not by a lot. And now we're getting to the topic of this video, because you have access to the Gollux items, regular access. You are able to replace these items on the regular, whereas the pitched items are extremely rare, right? And with KMS making 23 stars and 24 stars more achievable, upgrading these 3 pieces right here will actually enable you to skip basically the Dreamy Belt and the CFE unless you get the enhancement pieces for them and get them past 22 stars. And this is assuming you have these 2 items at 22 stars, right? Which is not really that much of a guarantee if you think about it. I've been playing the game for, what is it now, 2 years on my main, and I have not seen my Dreamy Belt go past 19 stars before booming. I have a 22 star CFE right now, but the Dreamy Belt, no luck so far, and there's no guarantee I will ever hit on this item. Hit this item, or get this item to 22 stars, right? And with all that being said, now let's take a look at the actual numbers. So I have that prepared here already. So we want to take a look at the pitched item set effect that we lose, the Dawn set effect that we would lose, and the Gollux set effect that we would gain by having 8 set items of the pitched items equipped and 4 Gollux pieces. Again, we would be rocking this setup right here, where we have Gollux pieces and pitched items. Nice. Okay, with that being said, okay, let's scroll down again. If we compare these two, we will end up with -4 all stat, +2 attack, and roughly -240 main stat. You can take a look at the details here. I will not be going into them right now. We will be going to the next step of my comparison right here. Okay, with that being said, let's continue to the next step of my comparison right here. I put in all the stats that we would lose or gain by having the Gollux set items equipped, and for me, with my stat efficiency calculator using the Maple Scouter right at this moment, I would lose roughly 2.8% final damage by having the Gollux items equipped. With that being said, my assumption would be that the Gollux items and the pitched items are all at 22 stars to make the comparison fair, while obviously the pitched items get a much greater flame score than the Gollux items, while the Gollux items have their hefty set effect. Okay, the question really was how much extra attack I need to get on my Gollux item to offset this final damage loss. And that is quite interesting. Again, I used the Maple Scouter to figure that out. I just put in as much attack as I needed to reach plus 2.8% final damage, and that was 95 attack. If you're wondering about Star Force also giving you all stat, that is not a thing past 22 stars. You will only receive attack, and with a 150 item, you will receive 20 attack per star. So if we were to compare a 22-star Gollux belt to a 25-star Gollux belt, the 25-star Gollux belt will have 60 more attack, and the same is true for the superior Gollux earrings and the superior Gollux pendant. So if we had 2 of these items at 25 stars instead of 24 stars, the 4 set Gollux items would be better than the pitched items. Again, with the assumption that the pitched items are at 22 stars and you don't have the enhancement pieces or like enhancement hammers applied to your belt or your CFE, right? Which the only reasonable one out of these two is the belt, right? With that being said, you might say, if I scroll all the way up again, actually, if I would be rocking my pitched setup, my Daybreak pendant right here would also be at 25 stars, right? And that is very, very, very smart to say, and also something that I thought about. And of course, you would also need to offset that. So you wouldn't need like 2 pieces, but rather you would need all 3 pieces at 25 stars to really, really offset that. The Dawn pendant is a 140 item, so it doesn't give plus 60, but it does still give plus 57 attack, so 19 attack per star past 22 stars. And that is something that you would need to offset. And the Daybreak pendant is also something that is very, very much reasonably farmable, right? So even I right now have plenty of Daybreak pendants just sitting in my inventory because I cannot know what I want to do in 6 months from now. And it takes a long ass time to do anything in this game, as I've already said in the opening. So the key takeaway right now at this stage of the video is not, oh my god, Gollux items are better than pitched, screw pitched. No, because the, you know, upgraded, or I don't know, it's not upgraded, the changed star forcing system isn't even in the game right now, right? But since everything takes forever to achieve in this game, you might as well prepare by collecting reinforced Gollux earrings or superior earrings, and not have them sorted in your inventory correctly, right? And you might as well collect reinforced belts and superior belts in the meantime, although you will get a ton of belts to fodder into just from Pink Bean alone. So belts really aren't as important, but the reinforced earrings are important. Obviously the superior pieces on their own are also important to just pick up and keep in your inventory in order to be prepared. And that is really the main stuff that I wanted to talk about in this video. The only other comparison that I would like to touch on here briefly is the 25-star Twilight Mark, which can be better than a 22-star Berserk. If you compare these two items right here, you see the 25-star Twilight Mark has more attack but less all-set than a Zerg. And you would gain, in the scenario that I showed, you would gain the 2-set Dawn set effect and lose the 8-set pitched set effect, right? So if we were to go to the game here real quick and just take a look at the set effect again, the 7 set effect here, the 8 set effect is also 10 boss damage, 15 attack, and yeah, the Twilight Mark Dawn boss set effect is really, really similar, right? So this is something that you could potentially do. It could potentially be an upgrade for you if you only lose a relatively small set effect from the pitched boss set, meaning not, for example, the 7 set effect right there, which is 5% crit damage. That is massive, right? If you were to lose the 6 set effect, the 10 ID, who cares, right? So keep that in mind. With that being said, am I going to be collecting Twilight Marks in hopes to upgrade my Twilight Mark to 25 stars? Unlikely. In theory, Berserks should be more accessible to us with X-Lotus, right? But that doesn't guarantee it. But at least you could tap your Twilight Mark to 23 stars in the future to, just get it a little bit stronger, I suppose. And a 22-star Berserk will still most likely just replace it, right? So keep that in mind. I will probably save a couple of Twilight Marks, but if I were to make a decision today, I think I would be discarding them in the future regardless. So, but yeah, don't put a gun to my head on this one. And yeah, closing thoughts for me right now are the following. Maybe I will upgrade one of my arcane pieces to 23 stars when the update hits. I don't think it's likely, but we will see. One of those, dude, upgrading one of the arcane pieces is fine in my opinion. It is costly, but at least, you know, it gives you arcane armor pieces to collect again and save in your inventory. No, I don't. I'm framing this as this would be a good thing, but I don't know. Having one arcane piece at 23 stars, or you know, potentially two to get the set effect. I don't know. You would always want to wear 3 anyways, right? Okay. I'm not 100% sure on this. Maybe it's worth it, maybe not. Okay, it's definitely not as worth it as, you know, saving your superior pieces. But again, I haven't given this extremely much thought. The main goal for me is to get people to think about this, right? Then the next thing that I want to include in my closing thoughts right here is you could have a potential 25-star superior Gollux pendant. And what do we usually do with superior Gollux pendants? Well, usually we do hammer them into sources, right? And that is still a potential use case, even if you are not going for 25-star superior Gollux items, right? You will still have the use case of hammering high star superior pendants into Source of Sufferings. And therefore, you will probably always want to run Gollux on the daily. I'm sorry to inform you about this, but yeah, that's maybe the way it is. Even to get a 23-star source, right? Yeah. And really the last thing that I wanted to talk about is lingering here in the top right corner, this whole video basically. It is the Whisper of the Source and the weird pendant that you'll get from Baldrix. Of course, you would slot these, not over the source, sorry, but over your superior pieces, at which point, of course, you would want to slot in your pitched boss items for belt and earring again, right? To make it look something like this. But with that being said, counting on getting these pieces to, not even saying to 22, but just getting these pieces at all is not reasonable right now, because counting on getting any pitched to begin with is not reasonable. And I don't want to make it seem like by comparison, since you can count on getting Gollux pieces, that reaching 25 stars on these is something that you can reasonably achieve. No, not even close. All I'm saying here is that it's worth to shoot your shot with these. And that is the main takeaway for me from having looked at this topic. If I were to invest further measures into my Gollux pieces, will I regret it down the line? That is the main question that I wanted to have answered for myself. And as I've laid it out right here, for me, this question is no. I would not regret this decision, right? And to be honest, I'm actually kind of looking forward to the Star Force changes. I definitely think they are going to happen. It would be kind of out of character if our GMS exclusive development team would not get us these changes. It would be nice to have the pitched item system changed for heroic, right? In order to make it more reasonable to also get 23-star pitched items, because all the future content is probably going to be balanced around that, right? At least to a certain extent. Because, you know, in reality, the game balance is determined by stuff that is way too hard to do for anybody. And then the Omega Super Whales, you know, the whale of whales, they will get to this content first, and then the whales will get to that content, and then the mini whales. And until the content is reasonably doable by anybody, it takes years anyways, right? So yeah, I heard the great hope of many rebooters that is a pitched pity system, and I personally don't believe in that at all. I honestly think by just watching the system messages recently and seeing how many people spend money on the Tanjiro VAC pets, that was a message towards Nexon that they're doing a great job, and it's not really incentivizing them to change anything, right? And even if you think they would be introducing a pitched pity system, they could have done so a long time ago. They could have also given us back our Reboot XP curve, for example, right? Reboot lost their bonus EXP because of an influx of Lost Ark players in Korea, which they wanted to direct towards rec servers instead of Reboot, so they nerfed Reboot into the ground. We got the same changes for no reason, right? No reason at all, and they haven't been taken back, right? So there's absolutely no reason to believe in a pitch pity system, in my opinion. And with that being said, I will be saving spares, and I think you should be saving your Gollux spares as well. Take care everyone, and I'll see you around.